out with you. I want to get to do that. And so, but since I do that a lot, I have this experience where I kind of, I hear a lot of the same themes come up, maybe over and over again. Some of the same type things will come up in conversation. And it's interesting because no matter what age bracket you're in or what stage of life you're in, a lot of times it's some of the same things. And one of those things that comes up time and time again when I meet with people is that there's this very real struggle right now of figuring out how to live out faith in Christ in just the normal day-to-day. Like there's this, it can be challenging or maybe not even necessarily clear because there's a lot that gets thrown at us. It can be difficult to figure out what am I supposed to do today with all those things that I just said that I believe, right? Like I talked about it with, professionals, people that have like jobs, like real ones, or finally have got a career, right? And sometimes there's a very real pressure to really not live out your faith through your career setting, to not talk about Christ, talk about faith. It's kind of there's a pressure to kind of leave that part of you, that central foundation of who you are out of your job, your career. And that's a challenge. I talk to college students all the time, man, just about walking through this ridiculously insane season of temptation, and then having professors maybe who disparage your faith, and like, how do I walk well with Jesus as a college student? Or like a parent, like all the things that we deal with our little kids and all these things that we're supposed to pour into them, and like, what am I supposed to do day in, day out to walk well with Jesus and show my kids how to follow Christ well? How do you do that? Or for all of us, regardless of kind of what stage of life we're all in, like there's this kind of a cultural climate sometimes where it feels like the loudest voices do not want to hear from a believer. There's a pressure just to stay silent. How do you walk out your faith in a cultural climate like that? If you're anything like me, I struggle with all those things and a lot more about figuring out day to day, day in, how I'm supposed to walk well following Jesus, how I'm supposed to live out what I believe, because I know I want to live what I believe and I want to live it well, but when it comes to the practicality about how to do that, it's a challenging question. Now, we're not going to fully answer that question today, all right? Just heads up. Now, we're not going to completely solve that for you today, but we are going to get a good solid starting point out of the book of Philippians in verses 27 and 28. So if you get a copy of God's Word, that's where I want you to be. Philippians chapter 1, verse 27 and 28. We're walking through Philippians as a church, and I don't know if you remember, but in Grand Opening Sunday, if you were here, I told you one of the things that Philippians is going to help us with is figuring this out. How do we walk well with Jesus? How do we live out our faith in this, the day-to-day of life? All right? So Paul's going to give us a starting point. He starts like this in 27. He says this. He says, "Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ." Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're striving for, right? That's the goal. We're hoping our manner of life is going to be worthy of the gospel of Christ. So day in, day out, how do I actually do that? When he says only right there, that carries this kind of idea of like there's just one thing. He's finished the whole intro. He's told him about how his life has been. It's been kind of rough, right? He's rejoicing in his sufferings. He's looking forward to what his deliverance, whether that means life or death. To live as Christ, to die as gain, right? And he comes to this line. He says, okay, this is what I need you to hear. This is the whole letter. This is what I'm trying to hang this whole thing on, is help you figure out how your manner of life can be worthy of the gospel of Christ. He's saying, don't miss this. This will be our kind of hanging, like our benchmark for the rest of the series, walking through the whole book of Philippians, of this is what we're trying to figure out, how to live lives worthy of the gospel of Christ. Because like following Jesus is not just a system of beliefs. We've talked about this already. Like there's like being a Christian, what it means to follow Jesus does not mean that you believe some things about Jesus. It is not about a mental agreement with a set of statements or facts or something. It is a life living those things out day in, day out. If you're a Christian, my assumption is that you actually want to live these things out. So how do we do that? Now, if this passage just stopped there and Paul said, hey, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, best of luck, signed Paul. Like, it wouldn't be very helpful. Like, we need some specifics there to figure out exactly how we're supposed to do this. Well, the rest of this passage and the next section that comes after it and a lot of the rest of the book is going to lean towards this. So let's look at the whole two verses together. So 27 and 28, the first half of 28, it says this, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. So whether I come and see you or am absent, I want to hear that you're standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel, and not frightened in anything by your opponents. I remember a few weeks ago, I was having a season of life like all of us do, where there's a struggle there. I was talking to several of you coming in this morning. You're like, I'm just really tired. There's a lot going on, or real stressed out with like work. There's a lot. And so I was having one of those days, like all of you have those days, and I'm kind of working through it, and there's just kind of a low point, And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what do you do? Because what we're told to do a lot of times is you just kind of bear up under it, and you kind of muscle up, and you just need to get over it and push through. And I don't know if you've tried that before. It doesn't always work. So when I'm walking through these difficult seasons, when I'm having a challenge of trying to figure out how to walk well with Jesus in the day-to-day, and I'm just really want to sit on my couch and do absolutely nothing, I've learned there's something specific that I need to do. I need to go and find a couple of the people, some of you are sitting in the room, and say, look, like this is what I'm struggling with. I'm having a hard time actually following Jesus well with this. Like this is the weight that I'm bearing right now, and like, can we talk? Can we do that thing where we sit across the table with a cup of coffee and have a conversation about it? And so what Paul is saying is like if we had an overarching idea, our main idea is that to live lives worthy of the gospel, we've got to live lives together. If we're going to live lives worthy of the gospel, we've got to live out this mission that he's called us to. We've got to do this thing together. This is not an individual sport here. Like there's something about community that enables us to live lives worthy of the gospel in a way that you cannot do by yourself. You just can't do it. Periodically, I'll talk with people that say, like, look, my relationship with Jesus is private. It's me and Jesus. I don't need anybody else engaged in this. It's just about me. And what I need you to hear this morning is that, like, from God's word, like, that's not true. Like, you cannot follow Christ with the same tenacity, with the same strength. You're not going to be able to stand firm when it's just you. You are meant to do this together. So to live a life worthy of the gospel, we've got to live the mission together. So let's take this whole passage apart, okay? So he begins like this. He says that we're going to stand firm in one spirit with one mind, all right? So that's the beginning point. This is how you do this. You want to know how to walk out your faith day to day, like how to live lives worthy of the gospel? It begins with standing firm in one spirit with one mind. Remember, he's writing to a church. He's not writing to you. He's not writing to an individual and telling them to stand firm. He's writing to this entire church plant that he got to help plant, all right? Like he got people down by the creek and everything, and the jailer, and all these people, he's writing to them collectively and saying, listen, if you guys are going to live lives worthy of the gospel, you've got to stand firm together in one spirit with one mind. The image here is that of some soldiers who are standing together, like facing attack. All right, like there's an oncoming attack, and they're bound together, they're locked arms together, and they're standing firm, holding the line, come what may. My dad over here did some college ministry stuff in another place several years ago, and has a story which I'm honestly don't necessarily know if I believe it, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. All right, it's one of those kind of dad stories, you know what I'm saying? And so Dad went on a mission trip to Alaska. It's weird when you tell stories about people who are literally in the second row, but it's cool. We're going to roll with it. And so Dad went on this mission trip to Alaska with a bunch of college students, and they're going to go do whatever missions you do in Alaska. I don't even know, all right, because that part never comes up in the story because this next part, all right? So they go hiking. Dad takes a couple of college students hiking. Seems like a great idea. We're in the Alaskan wilderness. Let's go find some wildlife. Everything in Alaska wants to kill you, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, right? And so they go down there, they get this little trail, and there's like 5 or 6 college students, and they've got cameras, and they've got Barry, and they just start walking down some trail, and they're going to go see what they can find, and they start walking, and as the story goes, Dad says, we got a little ways on this trail, and I smelled something, like really strong, like wild animal kind of smell. I'm like, I have no idea what wild animal smell is. Maybe you do. I don't know what that is. But he's told the other college students, he's like, do you guys smell that? I think there's a bear. Which they did, which you just like snickered. They're like, okay, Barry, cool. There's a bear. Great. Good nose, man. And so they just kept walking, right? And they just keep going down the trail, and they're doing their thing, and they go take a bunch of pictures for Instagram, and then in front of a mountain, they turn around, they come back up, and they're walking down this trail, and they turn this corner, and then like, lo and behold, there's a bear. Like a grizzly bear. Like a 500-pound, I will eat your face grizzly bear. And it's just Barry and some college students just hanging out. They don't have whistles. They don't have nothing. It's just a bunch of people from Alabama about to get killed by a bear. That's how this is going to go down, all right? And so they get there. There's like 6 of them. They're walking together. They're having a little conversation. They turn the corner, and they just freeze. Because we're from Alabama. We don't know what to do with bears, right? You stop moving, And so they're like 5 wide, and there's a 500-pound bear. And the bear looks at them, and then takes a step towards them. You know the story ends because he's alive. He's over there. It's annoying, right? Like if you didn't know he was still alive, this would be much better. Anyway, takes a step towards them, and then takes a second step towards them, and it's just like from me to you. Like it's not a long distance here, okay? And then it stops. And all the Alabama terrified people, they're all stopped. There's a bear, them. And the bear turns his head, and he just shoots straight up the side of a mountain. And everybody breathes again, right? And so they're watching this thing, and it's like crashing through the woods and running on or whatever, and they let it get far enough away that they thought they could probably outrun it, and they start running back out this trail back to whatever vehicle or thing that came in. Dad literally said, he's like, I just knew I didn't have to outrun all of them. I just had to outrun that one guy with the camera. Like I just had to beat that one dude, right? But there was something about that. Like there's a 500-pound bear, and there's just you. I would be really happy there was 5 other me's next to me, right? Like there's something about that. Like naturally we understand that when attack is coming, when things are coming against us, there's like safety in numbers. Like there's real strength when we have people that we can stand beside. But then for some reason, in all the things that we face in life, so many times we try to stand there like by ourselves and we're just going to handle it. That was never the way that God intended this to happen. He's like, stand firm in one spirit with one mind. Together, locked arms. Like you got to have people around you that you can lean into and that you can stand beside, come what may. So when the professor is disparaging your faith, like you've got some people that you can walk and like lean into and have those conversations with. When you're discouraged and depressed and there's anxiety pressing in around you, there's some people that you can call and say, this is what's going on. When your whole world feels like it's falling apart on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's somebody that you can lean on and say, hey, I need some time. I need some people around me. Like so let me ask you, like if you're a Christian in the room, even if you're not, I mean, when your whole world falls apart, like who can you call? When it's hard to follow Christ and you're struggling in it, like who are the people that you can lean on? Do you have those kind of people? Do you have like Christian community, like you have biblical community around you, like people that you actually can rely upon, who will be there for you and won't just tell you that you're going to be okay, but will actually point you to the Word of God and something actually helpful, right? Like, do you have some people who are trying to follow Christ well and who are just going to stand beside you? When your faith is shaken, who can you call? Because far too many of us like don't have anybody. We just don't. We're like almost like completely alone in this. We're trying to follow Jesus. We have this faith, we have this belief in Him, but then when it comes to try to walk it out, when things get hard, we don't have anybody we can lean on. Floating around like islands. Like there's no. Listen, your feet are going to slip sometimes. We're all going to hit patches of life that are difficult and challenging, and you're not always going to know what to do, and you're definitely not going to be strong enough to handle it by yourself. So why build a life like based completely upon your own self-sufficiency? Like it's not going to happen. We need people around us. Like 3 or 4 times in the last week, I was meeting with somebody who was going through something, and just in our little church, like just in Church of the Oaks, I was meeting with people who were going through hard times, checking on them, sending some text messages out to people walking through things, and I was so encouraged that at least half the time that I checked in on somebody who was walking through something hard, they said, hey, man, I appreciate you checking on me. My tribe's been praying for me. The guys in my huddle, they've been backing me up. Like I feel really well taken care of. Like it's been cool to see how Oaks has come around me and lifted me up. Like that's the whole point, right? Like when everything falls apart, you've got some people around you that can back you up, that can stand with you. I don't want to be out there facing the bear, like by myself. I don't want to be out there facing what you're facing by myself either. And if you're walking out that door into a life that's built completely on your self-sufficiency, that you're just going to handle come what may on your own, my plea for you is to plug in with some other believers in a place like this and lean into some relationships with some people that you've got some folks to walk with you, because you're not meant to walk with Jesus alone. So when your faith is shaken, who can you call? The second thing that Paul says, he says to be striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. But a part of what this looks like about having this community, that we're not just kind of standing together against attack, we're also striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. So the first thing he says is that when attack is coming, when challenges are coming, when turmoil is coming, you've got some people to back you up. The other side of it is when there's a mission set before you, you've got some people to lock arms with and run hard together. Like you're not going to accomplish the Great Commission on your own. Like there's going to be people that you're locked arms with, all right? So not only do you need some people who, when you're weak, you need some people when you're strong. So this is another picture of this time, but this is instead of soldiers this time, it's athletes. So that word that's striving right there, it's suethlio, all right? Athleo, it's an athleo. It's kind of like this is where we get the word athlete, all right? And so he's saying, like, strive together like a group of athletes. Now, that presents an issue because they didn't, like, have a lot of group sports in Paul's day. You know what I'm saying? So if you got to think about this, like, what does Paul actually have in mind? If he's writing, it's a plural verb. It's written to a group of people talking about them striving athletically together in something. So there's really only two things that Paul could have been thinking about. Might have both in mind. I don't know. I haven't met him yet. But so the first one could literally be gladiators. Like people who were fighting together to the death with other people in this, like, the gladiator ring, which is terrifying, and also kind of awesome, like, in a sense too. Like there's like that's the sense of this, like if they're striving side by side with the faith of the gospel, is like you're battling together. Like who are you fighting alongside? The other thing that he's probably more likely thinking about is wrestling, but not wrestling like you know it. And I've been so excited about unpacking this in Tuscaloosa specifically. Like, just hang with me here. I've been real pumped about this. Okay, so there was this wrestling thing, but it was like 10, 12, 15 guys, like big old dudes, okay, that would be on one team, and there'd be 10 or 12, 15 other guys on another team, and it was just like this giant group wrestle match fight thing, okay? And they would lock arms together, they'd slam into each other, they were blocking for each other, they're pushing each other forward. I'm like, this is biblical football, right? Doesn't that what that sound like? It sounds like the lineman just going like nose to nose all game. That's what it sounds like to me. So he's literally saying there's gonna be people that you're gonna be in line with, striving forward together. They gotta like fighting together, fighting for ground, pushing back the darkness. So I don't know if football is actually biblical or not, but the image holds true. Okay, so like we are in a fight together, and we're not fighting against other people ever. We're fighting for people always. Our battles with thrones and dominions and rulers and authorities, things seen and unseen. All right, there's a very real enemy, and it's not people. So we go to toe to toe against darkness for the sake of people who don't yet know Christ, who are walking in darkness and we're living literally without hope in the world. Like we go to fight for them. We got to lock arms and strive side by side for their sake. So what image comes to mind when you think about a Christian? Like when you think about a Christian who's like really doing it right, you know, like they're really following God, like they're just like super Christian kind of thing. What are they, like what mental image comes to mind for you with them? Because I think we rarely have the same image in mind that Paul does. I think that we think of nice, peaceful people, maybe kind of at a distance from the world, like kind of separated from society a little bit, like a monk or something. Like there's people who would spend all day praying by a creek and just like the babbling water. You know, there's this passivity to it. I like praying by creeks and stuff too, but that's not the picture that Paul is painting for us. When Paul imagines these Philippians, this new church plant that he's writing this thing to, he imagines them throwing down together, like battling for the souls of their neighbors together. Like a little bit of blood on their face and some dirt, like they have their hands dirty. They've been actively engaged in this mission, fighting for the souls of people together, like fighting hard, laying their lives down for those who don't yet know Christ. See what he says next? He continues, not frightened in anything by your opponents. Not frightened in anything, but like you're fighting side by side. You got some people that you're straining ahead with, and not frightened in anything, regardless of what the opponent is, whatever the barrier is, whatever the thing is that would stop the mission of the Great Commission. Like we're going to do this together. So when he says we're not frightened, he doesn't mean that we're not frightened in what we're facing because we're brave, but because we're serving the King of Kings and Lords of Lords, the victorious Savior who's already defeated everything for us, who's already come and defeated sin, he's already come and defeated death, he rose from the grave, defeating everything, like giving us a new life, like he's already done all this for us, like he is the victorious conquering king, and we're in his service. And so when we step out to be about his mission, we're serving the victorious king. Like what else, if he's for us, like what what can stand against us? You know that song? Like, if our God is for us, then what can stand against? But at some point, you and I actually have to stand and do the mission. Not individually going out and like handling it by ourselves, but having people that we're locked arms with, connected to, that have the same mission, the same vision, striving side by side together, engaged in the battle of the Great Commission. We are a team. Like the Universal Church, like capital C Church, like we are a team. We're supposed to be a unit. But locally, we have these bodies of believers called churches that are like local teams, all engaged in the same mission. The mission takes all of us. Maybe there's something in you that kind of just still doesn't buy that idea, that you can be just as effective for the name and renown of Christ by yourself as you could engaged with other believers. And I just don't see it. Because I think there's going to come times when your feet slip and you're not going to have anybody to help pick you up. And you're going to be sidelined for weeks or months or years because you don't have community around you. And then when it comes time for you that you actually want to see your life make a difference for the kingdom, there's nobody running alongside you, then you're like a little, I don't know. I think a lot of times we want to imagine ourselves as like these lone soldiers, these little ninjas like going out and taking out armies by ourselves or something. Like, I've got this. I'm strong enough and I'm bright enough. I can do this. I can be effective I don't need anybody else. I don't know, man. If biblical football is real and like one of you goes and stands in front of any team out there, I think you're going to get trucked. And I think so many times Christians are so frustrated with why they don't see any effectiveness in their lives for the sake of the kingdom. And I think a lot of times it's because you're out there by yourself. You have any community around you. You're not striving together. You're striving alone. It's not built to be that way. Listen, God didn't give you a mission. He gave us a mission. He set before us the Great Commission. It's not individualized for any one of us. It is our mission to make the gospel known, to make disciples, to live our lives for the gospel and through the gospel. And the way we do that, the way we accomplish that is locking arms with other believers and run fearlessly into the fight for the souls of our neighbors. Do you have people like that? Because so many of us don't. And so we end up floating around on our own, struggling personally and being completely ineffective in the world. That's how I've felt for so long. Until I finally plugged in with some other believers with the same heart and same mind. So we're planting a church here. So we're planting Oaks. Not for any one of us to accomplish a thing on our own, but to be a church with a common mission of the Great Commission. To be people who lock arms with one another, to lay down our lives for each other and for the souls of those who don't yet know Jesus. Oaks is a team. I know we call ourselves a church, but Oaks is supposed to function as a team. Every church is supposed to function as a team, us working together for a common purpose, the name and renown of Jesus. But for us to do that together, we have to know who's on the team. There's a point of that where, like, for us to be able to know who we're running beside, like for us to know who we're locking arms with in the Great Commission, like for us to know who to lean on and who to press into, like we've got to know who's actually on the team and who's just thinking about it, or who's just there to watch, right? Like who's just there to kind of wants to ride the bench and wants to, kind of just chill for a little while, and who actually wants to be engaged in the mission. I want to know who's running with me. Like if you're out here and you're thinking like, I want to have people like that, at some point, there's got to be a level of commitment where we know who is on the team. Last year, Jack was playing soccer, which he was 7. I don't know if you ever watched a 7-year-old soccer game. It's a nightmare. Like, it's complete and utter nonsense. People are just running everywhere, kicking everybody in the leg because they can't hit the ball, so they just accidentally just kick people. It's just people being kicked for like an hour, okay? But toward the end of the season, they started kind of getting some flow a little bit, and they were kind of moving the ball in a direction. It wasn't always a productive one, but they were still in a direction, right? And there was this one little kid who could not understand offense. Like, her little brain was like, I'm going to take everyone down. I don't care who you are. I don't care what color your jersey is. I'm going to own you, all right? And so Jack and the other little kids, they'd be making their way down the field or whatever, and she'd be down there. She's like, let's go. And she would just drill a kid as hard as she could. Doesn't matter what team it's on. And she would she was incredible. Not helpful, but incredible. And she'd steal the ball, and she'd just take off going whatever the opposite direction of that the ball was coming in. She's just her solo team, all right? I just remember laughing so hard with Jessica after like the 50th time this had happened. And Jack's sitting there, standing in the middle of the field. If you don't know my little Jack yet, he's got a little voice on him. And he's standing there, he's like, I'm on your team, right? Just like rage. If we don't know who's on the team, like we're going to be pulling in all kind of different directions, doing different things. Like we got to know who's on the team. This week, the thing I'm really excited about, we're opening up membership at Church of the Oaks. If you're not been a part of a church before, membership, if you have been a part of a church before, membership, I don't know what it meant at those other churches. It may have meant a lot. It may have been really important and significant. It may not have meant a lot. It may have been just kind of this thing that you can do and it didn't really carry any weight or significance. It means a lot here. Membership is going to mean a lot here because it means that you are on the team. It means that you're committed. And beyond that, like in a biblical sense, that you're covenanted together with us to lock arms together for the mission of the gospel. Being a member of Church of the Oaks means that you want to be known, that you don't want to be anonymous. It means that you want to be used, that you want to be a part. You don't want to ride the bench. It means that you want this to be your church family with all the bumps and bruises that comes with family. Listen, Oaks has 0 members right now. All right, so I'm not a member because membership's not open yet. And if you're on launch team, there's 0 members at Oaks. We're going to start fresh. We're going to start together. And so we're going to line out this process where, like, if you want to be a part of this thing, if you want to be a founding member of Oaks, then there's a process to help you figure out exactly what that means and what's entailed in that, so you can pray through that and decide if this is who you want to lock arms with, so that we can know who's on the team, so we can drive hard after the Great Commission together. All right, so if the way that's going to work is if you have that connection card in your chair, there's another box on there besides the Meet with Britain one, which you feel free to check that one too. But on that box, there's on the side of the thing, it says, I'm interested in membership. Is that what it says? Something like that? I'm interested in membership. If you check that box, what's going to happen is you're going to get an email probably tomorrow or the next day, depends on when we get through them all. And you're going to get an email. It's going to have just kind of a brief explanation of the whole process. It's going to let you know what our membership covenant is, so you can look at it. It's not one that you can sign yet. I'll get to that in a minute. But it's going to let you read through that and pray through that. And it sends you a profile so that we can learn a little bit about who you are. Right? Like we can figure out what your background is, and you can see the thing. Once you turn that profile in, we're going to send you what other churches would have like a membership class or a membership course. I'm just going to make a video, all right? And so I'm going to send you that and just let you like work through that. Once you've done that, then you're going to meet with either me or Austin to answer any questions that you've got, to talk through whatever concerns you may have, or like just really nail it down, and then plan any next steps that we need to do. And then in a few weeks' time, we're going to have a Founders Day. So as a church, we're going to have set a day aside where all of us who have worked through that process to that point can commit together, and we're going to pray together, and we're going to covenant together to be a church. We're going to say, yeah, I'm on the team. That's going to be Founders Day for us. And so whoever's walked through that process by that point will be founding members of Church of the Oaks, which I'm pretty pumped about. I'm going to be on there. I don't know if you're going to be on it, but I'm there. Okay. So in a few weeks, we're gonna knock that out. So I'll kind of review that because I know it's a lot. Check the box on your card. You're going to get an email. Fill out the profile. Watch the videos we send you. Meet with me or Austin. And then, if God still called you to do this, then you'll sign a covenant on Founders Day, and we'll be church members together, okay? All right, so that's our goal. So we started out our time today like saying, all right, listen, it is really difficult sometimes to walk out my faith in day-to-day life. In my job, in my class, like whatever, like it's hard for me sometimes. It's hard for all of us sometimes to walk well following after Jesus. And so what do we do about that? And so Paul sets up this situation where he's saying, listen, you've got to have people that are locked arms with you, standing side by side with you, so when attacks are coming, you can stand firm. And then when you want to step up and be useful, like in the kingdom, when you want to make a difference, you want to go after the people who don't yet know Jesus, you've got to have people to run alongside. But in either case, there's going to be people beside you. Who are those people for you? And do you want to be a part of these people? I've told everybody that was on launch team, I've told everybody that's had any contact with Oaks, I think, like, listen, I want you to be where God's called you to be. And if that's with Oaks, fantastic. I want you to go all in. We don't have a bench to sit on at Oaks. Like if you want to be used, if you want to make a difference, then come jump in with us. But if God calls you somewhere else, then please, with both feet, go jump in with them. But I just know that for your sake, and the sake of what God wants to do in and through you, you've got to have some people. If you don't, we want to be that church for you. Our band's going to come, and they're going to lead us in a time, a response, and here's how I want to kind of bring our time to a close. Listen, I just want you to have some time to reflect and some time to think and some time to pray. And so I just want to ask you a couple of questions, and I just want you to be able to think through those on your own and just kind of just have a second to process. All right. So you ready to think? So first, what are the things what are the struggles that you've been walking through recently? Just kind of name them in your own mind. What are the struggles that you've been walking through recently? All right. Do you have people around you to actually back you up and not just support you, but point you towards Christ in those things you're walking through? Do you have people around you that'll point you towards Christ in the things that you're walking through? I hope you do. For a lot of us, we don't. Next question, is there something in you that thinks you're supposed to rely on yourself to get through those things that you face? Or is there anything in you that kind of wants to pull away from this idea of having people around you? You want to be a go-it-alone person. If you do, if there's something like in me, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like doing this by myself. If that's you, like I'm going to be a little forceful, like same with me. Like that's pride. That thing in you that wants you to keep you separated from people, that's pride. It's not true. Let me see, I guess this one. Like, do you want to see your life make an impact in your neighbors? Do you want to see your life make an impact in our city and our campus and across the world? Like, do you want to be used? Are you willing to be used together? Are you willing to lock arms with other people and lift them up when they're weak and propel them forward when they're a little sluggish? Are you willing to be family for somebody else? I hope so. I want to pray for you. Father, it is not a light thing to join a church, especially the kind of membership that we're talking about, where we're saying we want to be a team. We want to strive side by side for the faith of the gospel, not frightened in anything by our opponents. But God, there is something in each one of us that feels like we're supposed to sometimes be strong enough to handle it on our own. And God, I pray that you would help break us of that tendency to go solo. And so, Lord, I pray, trusting that you can do this, I pray that you raise up a group of people to be Church at the Oaks, who are dedicated to loving one another well, to putting you first in all things, and to striving side by side for the mission that you've set before us. God, draw people to the team. For your name, for your glory, and for your renown. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen. Why don't you stand with us?